Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome aboard the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad's Frostburg Flyer Excursion Train. I am your conductor today. My name is Cooper. We are very pleased you could join us here today here on the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad. Now, as we climb 1,400 feet into the Allegheny Mountains, I'm going to begin pointing out some of the most scenic and historic highlights along our trip today. So please sit back, relax, grab a drink, and enjoy the ride. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now rolling through the Cumberland Narrows. The Cumberland Narrows is a canyon that was carved between Haystack Mountain on the left-hand side of the train and Wills Mountain on the right by Wills Creek. It was a very important place in the early years of colonial America, as it was the only known gaps in the Allegheny Mountains that could afford travelers passage westward. The Narrows was also seen as an important asset by the railroads in the area, and as such, 6 railroads called the Narrows home. The principal 2 railroads being the Western Maryland Railway on this side, the one that you're literally riding on right now, and the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, now CSX, on the other side of Wills Creek. You will notice how we are just about in elevation with the CSX trackage. When this portion of the Western Maryland was being built in 1911, the Western Maryland wanted a technologically superior railroad. And in just under 2 miles, we're going to be 150 feet above the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. Folks are now entering Georges Creek Junction. Georges Creek Junction is where all 6 of those railroads converged on the Narrows. The railroads were the Western Maryland, Georges Creek in Cumberland, Pennsylvania Railroad in Cumberland, and the Western Port Electric Railway shared this side of the canyon. Sharing the other side of the canyon was the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad and the Cumberland and Pennsylvania Railroad. The bridge we're about to cross was built in 1911 by the Keystone Bridge Works. This was also the site of a terrible train wreck that happened in the early 1900s. A train lost control of its brakes at the summit of Big Savage Mountain and careened downhill 21 miles to its final resting point on this very bridge. The heroic crew did all they could to stay on board and slow the train down, but unfortunately it was all in vain. The train packed this bridge, saw the coal cars, and thousand tons of coal. The train may have made it over the bridge in one piece, but the intensity Folks, if you do happen to hear me laugh or stutter today, I do apologize. Sometimes my brain does feel like a 2003 Dell computer that's in desperate need of an update. Anyways, if you look to the right-hand side of the train, you will see a couple buildings down in the valley there. Behind those buildings is the Baltimore and Ohio main line over 150 feet below us. As was mentioned before, when this portion of the railroad was being built in 1911, the Western Maryland wanted a technologically superior railroad. The general rule of thumb when building a railroad through the mountains is to follow the river. Water will choose the easiest passage downhill, and as such, it could afford you a relatively easy passage uphill. I don't know if you can notice, but there's no river around, and the Western Maryland completely disregarded this and decided to carve their own path through the mountains, making it one of the most expensive stretches of railroad constructed in the United States per mile. Because of this, the Western Maryland's crossings of the Alleghenies was less steep, and it was also shorter between Baltimore, Maryland and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, making its line very, very competitive with the larger B&O. With that being said, folks, the railroad back in the day in 1911, it costed $12 million to build. In today's money, that's just over $300 million. Folks, as we enter the next curve on the inside here in the mountain here, in the blasting of the rocks on the hillside, you'll notice a cave. When the railroad builders were blasting through the hillside, they came across a cave. Now, inside that cave, they found various prehistoric specimens, including a saber-toothed tiger skeleton, a short-faced bear skeleton, and a juvenile mastodon. All of those very specimens are at the Smithsonian Institute to this very day. The most complete example of a saber-toothed tiger came from what is now known as Cumberland Bone Cave. This is also the location of the first of 3 horseshoe curves on this railroad. Ladies and gentlemen, we're also now passing the largest maple syrup sugar farm in the state of Maryland. Located on a farm just below the railroad in Morganville, Maryland, is known as S&S Maple. You can see the blue tubing connecting to the trees from the left and right-hand side of the train, collecting the sap for the syrup. Folks, if you look to the right-hand side of the train, you will see a mountain valley. The mountain on the right-hand side is called Little Allegheny Mountain. The mountain on the left is Piney Mountain. Through Piney Mountain here in about 10 minutes, we're going to be going through a 914-foot long tunnel.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're now rounding Helmstedter's Curve. Helmstedter's Curve is the second horseshoe curve in our trip today. It was named for the family that owned the farm that was crossed by the railroad in 1911. That same family owned the farm for over 100 years and only recently gave up the practice. You can still see the original farmhouse once you get towards the other side of the curve. The original farm, however, burnt down in 2009. To help out the Helmstetter family, the Scenic Railroad held a fundraiser for the construction of the barn. The Amish came in and, as the Amish do, raised a new barn in just a single day. This curve was constructed by building a trestle across Cache Valley and then burying the trestle in thousands of tons of dirt and rock that were being excavated from the cuts and tunnels being built at the same time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Helmstedter's Curve. Folks, at the end of the 19th century, the Western Maryland was a relatively poor short-line railroad. However, with the vision of stitching together a true coast-to-coast transcontinental railroad, an individual by the name of J. Gould purchased the Western Maryland. Mr. Gould began buying up the railroads all across the country, including the Denver and Rio Grande Western, the Wabash, the Wheeling and Lake Erie, and several others. Arguably one of the most important links in this chain was the Western Maryland, as its eastern terminus was located at the second largest port on the eastern seaboard, Baltimore, Maryland. Immediately after purchasing the Western Maryland, Gould began an aggressive expansion campaign that would eventually extend the Western Maryland by over 300 miles into parts of Pennsylvania and West Virginia. Part of the plan of the expansion was for most of the infrastructure to be constructed to accept 2 tracks in the event of further expansion down the road. One such piece of infrastructure that at one time did have a double track is Brush Tunnel directly in front of the train here. When the railroad builders got to the base of Piney Mountain here, they had 2 choices: build 2 miles of track around Piney Mountain or poke a 900-foot hole through it. I think they decided on the hole. those folks sitting in coach class at the moment, if you are feeling hungry or thirsty, feel free to head to the very last car of the train as there is a snack bar open. The snack bar today is serving nachos, chips, candy, water, soda, and alcoholic beverages available for purchase. If you head back there, we'll be happy to serve you. Thank you. Folks, you're now passing an era in the railroad known as Sunnyside. However, back in the days of the steam locomotive, Sunnyside was known as Lap. Lap was a very important water stop for the steam engines ascending Big Savage Mountain. The Western Railroad had some of the largest and most powerful steam locomotives of their type in the world, and as such, they had a ferocious appetite for coal and water. This is also the location of a passing track for trains coming downhill to stop and cool their brake shoes and wheels. Between Cumberland and the summit of the original Western Maryland grade, there was about 21 miles of downhill trackage. Ladies and gentlemen, now rounding the third and final horseshoe curve in our trip today. Just beyond the curve in 2016, the hillside supporting the railroad collapsed into the valley due to mining activities in the area. This closed the railroad to Frostburg for a few years while the tracks had to be rebuilt. Once we get towards the other side of the curve, you'll be able to see that very clearing in the trees. Also, at the clearing of the trees coming across the valley, you will be able to see Sunnyside in the distance 200 feet below us and 2 rail miles away. Folks, if you look to the right-hand side of the train, you will notice 2 piles of gravel. Now, while those piles of gravel may look and seem very insignificant on this very day in 1852, that's right, folks, I believe this very day in 1852, absolutely nothing happened. Folks, if you look to the right-hand side of the train, through the next few clearings in the trees and down and across the valley, you will see the quaint little town of Mount Savage, Maryland. Now, far from being quaint in its heyday, it was once the 5th largest city in the state of Maryland and one of the birthplaces of the Industrial Revolution. The first iron rail ever not imported, but that was made in America, was made down there in Mount Savage. There was indeed a lot of industry crammed into that little valley. There was an iron foundry, a locomotive building company, a railroad company was based in Mount Savage. There was a fire rick factory, a lumber yard, and lots of mining. There were iron ore mines, fire clay mines, and coal mines. Coal mining was one of the most prevalent industries in this area. To give you an idea of just how many mines there were in the area, make a mental note of where Mount Savage is on the railroad, and once we get to Frostburg, consider the distance. They were filling a mine up in Frostburg with cement in somebody's basement, and Mount Savage began to seep up with cement through the ground. Folks, the gully to the left-hand side of the train as you enter the next curve right here is the site of a terrible train wreck that happened in 1925. A fully loaded 70-car coal train lost control of its brakes at the summit of Big Savage Mountain and came bashing down the hill 10 miles before it ultimately left the rails. Just after the train left Big Savage Hill, the train came apart and stopped. Rather than wait for the assistance of another engine, the crew of locomotive 850 thought the best thing for them to do at the time was to release the brakes on the rear half of the train and let it coast and hit into the front. The concussion of the sudden coupling caused the entire train to begin rolling, and before the engineer could build up enough air pressure to stop the train, the 5,000-ton coal train was already well beyond regaining control. The wreckage was scattered from here to Frostburg, and the crew bailed immediately. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, nobody in the ticket office today purchased a runaway train ticket, so we will not be doing that experience. Thank you. Folks are now entering a spot on the railroad known as Switch Number 9. This location gets its name from the Consolidated Coal Corporation Mine Number 9, which was just around the bend on the right. This is also where we leave the Western Maryland trackage and enter the steepest part of our railroad, the Cumberland and Pennsylvania Railroad, or the CMP. As I said before, the Western Maryland was built to a fairly high technological standard. The CMP was absolutely not. They slapped the tracks into the hillside on switchbacks just to get the coal out of the mountains. Railroad steepness is measured in percentage, so for every 100 feet of travel, if you rise up 1 foot, that's 1%. 2 feet is 2%, and, well, so on. 4% is considered debilitating for a regular railroad locomotive. The CMP tops it at 3.5%, making it a quite formidable climb for our locomotive today. The locomotive pulling you folks today is a General Electric B32-8 locomotive. It was built for the Southern Railway and then Norfolk Southern in 1989. And a little fun fact about locomotive number 558, if you took all of the wiring out of the locomotive and laid them out end to end, you would have a heck of a time putting them back in for us. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about 1.5 miles outside the town of Frostburg. Please remain seated as we enter Frostburg Station. Once the train has stopped and you've heard a loud blast on the horn, it is safe to get up and prepare to disembark the train. We will hold deboarding for just a few moments while the train prepares, and then myself or a car attendant will tell you when it is safe to get off the train. Once everyone is off the train, we will cut the engine from the train and put it on the turntable, where we will spin it around so that we can put it on the other end of the train in the direction. You are more than welcome to watch us do so. It is just 200 feet beyond where we stop the train on the station. We will then run the engine around the train for our return trip to Cumberland. After watching the engine spin, you are more than welcome to go up into the town of Frostburg to explore the shops and restaurants on Main Street. Main Street can be accessed via a flight of stairs that is located next to the turntable. Frostburg can also be accessed by a shuttle service provided by the railroad, located on the other side of the station upon arrival at the depot. Several trips will be made during the layover for your exploratory convenience. There are several restaurants to choose from, including El Caneo, a Mexican-style restaurant, Shogun, a Japanese-style restaurant, LG's Pizzeria and Pub, and the Princess's which are all located on Main Street. Please tell your server that you are with the train so that they may expedite your service. Those of you less interested in the short journey up into the town of Frostburg can be fed at a small snack shack called the Trails Inn Cafe, located across the street from the station. They serve burgers, hot dogs, beer, and ice cream. In the way of things to do in the immediate vicinity of the station, next to the turntable is the Thrasher Carriage Museum, which features one of the largest collections of horse-drawn carriages in the United States. Admission to the museum is included with your train ticket, and located on the right-hand side of the train once you get up to Frostburg is the Coal Miners Memorial, which will be along the little trail next to the tracks. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do go up into the town of Frostburg, this information you hear next is very, very, very important, so please listen closely. We will begin reloading the train at 2:10. Please be back on the train by 2:25. The train will leave Frostburg Station at 2:30 sharp. Once again, we will begin reloading the train at 2:10 p.m. Please be back on board by 2:25 p.m. The train will leave Frostburg Station at 2:30 p.m. sharp. We do not want to leave anybody behind, but we are on a very tight schedule. So please be back by 2:25. We will leave at 2:30. For those folks coming back at 2:31, I have one word for you. Uber. Thank you.